If you run a hospital, a manufacturing plant, a school system, a government campus, a data center, or a large commercial property, you probably sign off on utility bills that are the size of someone else's annual salary. They come in, you glance at the total, you may compare to last month, and you approve them because you have a business to run. The assumption sitting behind that approval is simple. The utility is regulated and the bill is probably right. But what if it's not right? Today, we are decoding utility bill audits and error recovery. It's an incredibly important topic for you. And by the time we're done, you'll understand what a utility bill audit actually is, what kinds of errors show up in real portfolios, how money gets recovered, and how to decide whether you should invest in an audit for your own facilities. It's a good deal. I'm Daniel Burke. This is Energy Answers by Tactical Energy Group. If you're in healthcare, manufacturing, government, education, large commercial real estate, or data centers, and you're responsible for a serious utility budget, this episode is absolutely built for you. We're going to talk about this at the level where you can sit down with finance and say, here's why we are or are not doing an audit this year. So let me start with a direct answer to the decision question of the day, right? Energy Answers, top 100 energy decisions. You asked, should we invest in a utility bill audit to identify and recover potential energy overcharges and optimize future billing? What a great question to ask. And here is the short version. If you have large recurring utility spend across one or more facilities, the odds are very high that there are errors or missed opportunities buried in your bills. A proper utility bill audit done by someone who actually understands tariffs and meter math can usually recover a small percentage of your past spend and fix issues so they do not keep repeating. Because most reputable firms work on a contingency fee, your downside is mostly time and data gathering. For most sizable C&I operators, being on a regular audit rhythm is a smart move, not a luxury. So now let's define what we're actually talking about. What is a utility bill audit? A utility bill audit is a forensic review of past utility invoices and the rules that govern them. It's not just checking that the last month's total is roughly what you expected. It's pulling several years of bills, the acceptable rate schedules, your contracts, the meter details, and sometimes tax records, and asking, if we ran this billing from scratch under the rules that we're supposed to apply, using the readings and the multipliers and the tariffs, would we get the same answer the utility billed us for? That can cover electricity, natural gas, water, wastewater, steam, and in some cases, telecom services. The output is a list of specific errors, the math behind them, a dollar figure for what should be refunded or credited. It also includes recommendations for how to prevent those issues moving forward. So how does that process actually work? Let's dive into that. It's usually broken into a few separate phases. And the first one is data collection. You or your team gather several years of bills, often 3 to 5, sometimes more, along with any special contracts, copies of the relevant tariff sheets, meter information, and any exemption certificates for taxes or fees that you might have. Second, baseline review. The auditor maps your accounts, identifies which meters feed which facilities, what rate schedules you're on, and whether anything looks obviously strange at a glance. This is where they may flag accounts that are on an odd rate for their size or where demand charges might look out of proportion to actual consumption. Third, detailed bill-by-bill examination. This is the core of the work. For each invoice, that auditor will verify, is the correct tariff or rate schedule applied for this customer type and voltage level? Are the energy and demand line items calculated correctly, including time of use windows, where and if those exist? Do the meter readings and multipliers line up with the consumption and demand being billed, or are there signs of estimated reads that were never trued up or multipliers that did not match the meter nameplate? Do the bills match the contract terms where a special contract exists? Have eligible tax exemptions actually been applied to the right accounts and stayed in force over time? That's a big one. You can get exempted from certain things and all of a sudden find yourself opted back in. Are the bills consistent with commission-approved rules, especially for things like ratchets and riders? That's very important. If they're not properly applied, they can be crazy costly for you. Now, fourth, there will be error identification and quantification. When they find a misapplied rate, an incorrect meter multiplier, a lapsed exemption, or a miscalculated rider, they do the math. They apply the correct rule across the whole audit period and compute the difference between what you paid and what you should have paid. That's the heart of the audit. Fifth, reporting and recovery. You get a report that says, in effect, on account X under tariff Y, line item Z was misapplied from this date to this date. Here is the correct calculation and the total overcharge. That report becomes the basis for approaching the utility for bill credits or refunds. Many auditors will also help draft the correspondence and track the recovery process. Sixth, forward looking recommendations. Good auditors do not just say, here's what you're owed. They also say, here's how to avoid this going forward, which can include changing rate classes, correcting how demand is managed, fixing power factor issues, renewing exemptions, or consolidating accounts. Many of those topics we've already covered in previous Energy Answers episodes, so check back to cover those in detail. Why should you, as a CNI operator, care enough to bother with a potential utility audit? Well, start with direct financial recovery. If you're spending millions a year on utilities, even a modest 1 to 3% error rate spread across a few years is real money. A 1% error on $5 million over 3 years is $150,000. If the error is 3%, it's $450,000. Those numbers show up in case studies over and over again. Misapplied demand ratchets, wrong multipliers, wrong rate classes, expired exemptions. There is risk mitigation. When a billing mistake is systemic, for example, a demand ratchet being applied incorrectly for years, it's not just the past you should care about. Unless someone corrects it, you'll keep paying that premium every single month going forward. And if it happened for years in the past, it will likely happen for years in the future. Better billing also means better budgeting. If your bills are accurate and your rate structures are corrected, your forecasts and your energy strategies are built on solid ground instead of hidden errors. Audits also surface optimization opportunities. Sometimes the penalty is legitimate, say a power factor penalty, and the audit concludes, yes, you owe this, but here's how you can fix it with a project that pays back in a short time. Or they find you're on a rate class that made sense for a previous occupant, but not for your operation, and moving to the right tariff saves you money each and every year. Finally, there's the expertise and time factor. Utility tariffs are not light reading. They change, they have footnotes that matter a lot. Most in house teams are not set up to do line by line tariff compliance checks on years of history. Bringing in someone who lives in that world can be a good use of external help. So let's address a few misconceptions that keep people from doing this. Misconception number one, our bills are always correct because the utility is regulated and we like our account rep. The reality I have seen over and over is that billing errors almost always favor the utility. Strange. They're not usually malicious. They are the result of human error, system changes, account changes, and just the sheer volume of accounts. Customer service reps are often responsible for more accounts than they can reasonably manage at a deep and detailed level. Without an audit, an error can sit there for years, costing you the whole time. Misconception two, we already review our bills internally or with our utility account rep. Most internal reviews consist of checking that the total is in line with expectations, maybe checking KWH and KW against a pattern and confirming that nothing looks wildly out of line, no anomalies. Now that's valuable, but it's not the same as recalculating every bill from the tariff up. Internal teams rarely go line by line and compare each charge to the fine print in the rate book, which is the source of truth. Misconception number three, the savings are not worth going to the effort. For small, single site operations with modest spend, that might be true. For large healthcare systems, manufacturers, government campuses, universities, and big real estate portfolios, it's usually not. When annual spend is in the hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, a small percentage error multiplied over time is very significant. On top of that, most utility bill audit firms work on a contingency fee. They take a percentage of recovered funds, which means your financial risk is mostly the time spent providing data. It's very low risk. Misconception number four. We have a good relationship with our utility rep. They make sure that we are on the right rate. This one is very important. I have met very few utility account reps who truly operate as auditors for their customers. That's not their job, and they are not trained or incentivized to be the forensic evaluator on your behalf. They carry the authority of the logo and the name badge, and it's easy as an operator to assume if they say we're fine, well, we're fine. But in reality, the utility's incentive is to recover as much revenue as it can inside the rules it has been given. Your incentive is the opposite. When you rely on the same person to serve both those roles, you're putting someone in the position of being both scorekeeper and player. A proper audit is independent of that conflict. Now, how is a utility bill audit different from an energy audit? Utility bill audits are about billing accuracy and structure. They answer, did we get charged correctly under the rules? They look at history and they look at money. Energy audits, the ASHRAE levels, are about how your building or plant uses energy and where physical systems can be improved. A level 1 energy audit is a walkthrough, a quick look at bills and the building to identify obvious efficiency measures. Level 2 is a deeper survey and analysis, inventorying systems, looking at least a year of utility data, doing some measurements, and modeling energy conservation measures. Level 3 is investment grade, detailed metering, calibrated models, and contractor level pricing for big capital projects. You can do one without the other. Ideally, you do both at different times. Bill audits to make sure you're not overpaying for what you use, and energy audits to reduce what you use in the first place. So when should you actually consider doing a bill audit? It's an important question. If your organization spends at a meaningful level on utilities, hundreds of thousands or millions a year, and you have multiple accounts, complex operations, or have had changes in use over the last few years, you are absolutely a good candidate. Good times to pull the trigger include before major capital projects or renovations, so you can start from a clean and accurate, confident billing baseline. After significant operational changes, once a few months of new bills have come in, or when costs jump without a clear operational reason, after tariff or policy changes in your utility territory. At real estate milestones like new leases or acquisitions, on a recurring rhythm every few years, just as part of good financial hygiene. You can then decide how much you want to build in-house versus bringing in. Personally, I think most commercial and industrial operators should learn the basics of reading their bills and understanding their rate structures. That belongs in finance and accounting, not just in operations. But for a full forensic audit across years of history, pulling in a specialist who is unusually fascinated by this work is absolutely worth it. So let me give you the way I would explain this to someone on your team who perhaps hasn't listened to the entire episode. You are an expert in the processes and facilities you manage. That's your core competency. There are people out there whose core competency is the opposite. They are genuinely fascinated by every line on a utility bill, by meter multipliers, by tariff footnotes. When you bring those people into your account and give them good data, they often find very significant overcharges and savings opportunities, and then help you claw that money back into your budget. And they love this. That is what a utility audit is for. Let me recap, and then I'll give you some questions that you can take into your next morning huddle or your finance or operations team meeting. All right, first, utility bill audits are a forensic review of past bills, tariffs, and contracts with the goal of finding misbilling and recovering money. Two, for large commercial and industrial operators, errors are common enough and bills are large enough that even a 1 to 5% recovery over a few years can be very significant. Three, most reputable audit firms work on contingency, so your main cost is time and attention, not a large fee up front. Four, audits also surface optimization opportunities that improve your cost structure going forward, not just historical refunds from past issues. Five, relying on your utility rep alone to make sure you're on the right rate is not best practice. It's not a substitute for an independent bill audit. Now, look, I don't run your plant or your hospital or your school system. That's your job. But my job is to translate the mess and complexity of utility billing, of tariffs, and everything else, and give you questions and perhaps leverage that you can actually use to your benefit. The bottom line on utility bill audits and error recovery is this. If you're managing a large utility budget and you've never had a proper forensic audit, you're probably leaving money on the table. A well run audit done by someone who knows your tariffs and has access to your data can recover past overcharges, tighten up your billing going forward, and give you finance and operation teams that have a clear picture of what you're really paying for electricity, gas, and other services. So here are a few questions you can take into a morning huddle with finance and facilities. First, over the last 3 to 5 years, how much have we spent on electricity, gas, and other utilities? And have we ever had a forensic utility bill audit on that spend? Second, do we have anyone on our team who can take one of our bills and verify every line against the actual tariff and meter details, or are we relying entirely on the utilities calculation? Third, if we did recover 1 to 3% of our past utility spend and fixed issues going forward, what would we do with that money? And is that worth a contingency-based audit engagement? Probably yes. Fourth, if we decide to explore an audit, what criteria will we use to pick a firm? Industry experience, knowledge of our utility territories, contingency terms, and data security, and who will own that process and manage it on our side? If you can't answer those yet, that is your starting point. That's very good homework for you to take out of this episode. Now, I'll talk to two groups quickly before we bring this to a close. If you found this helpful, but you're not actively planning an audit right now, then send it to another operator who's dealing with high utility costs. It will give them a frame they probably do not have today, and it might save them a lot of money. They might just thank you. But look, if you're in a second group and you're actively considering a utility bill audit in the next 3 to 6 months, or you suspect that there are errors in your billing, we built something specifically to help you. It's called the Energy Decision Blueprint, and here's who it's for. It's for Indiana commercial and industrial operators with a significant utility spend who are seriously considering either a utility bill audit or a major energy improvement project. So here's what you get. First, a short discovery and fit call where we make sure your utility spend and your account structure are large and complex enough that an audit decision is meaningful for you. Second, we'll collect representative bills, rate information, and a summary of your accounts and facilities. We're not doing the full audit. We are helping you evaluate whether you should and how you would know that. Third, we schedule a 60 to 90-minute working session where I'll sit down with you, and when it makes sense, I'll bring in one of our other rate experts, and we'll walk you through how your current bills are structured across tariffs, demand charges, riders, and taxes, the kind of key areas you'd want that audit to cover and bear fruit for you. We'll look at where billing risks and likely error vectors live in your specific accounts, and we'll, of course, let you know. We'll also look at what a realistic recovery range could look like based on your spend and rate structures and all of the information we reviewed. We'll also talk to you about how to think about building basic bill review skills internally versus bringing in a specialist on contingency. It's important. If you do the audit, great. I think it's a good move, but you also want to understand and have a consideration for how much you want to upskill your people and have some of these expertise internally available to you. Fourth, you'll get a simple board-ready summary. It's usually 1 or 2 pages that lays out whether a utility bill audit is likely to pay off for you, what kind of firm you should be looking for, and what you want to ask them before you sign anything. For qualified accounts, this energy decision blueprint is free. And there are only 2 acceptable outcomes. If a proper utility audit is likely to return meaningful dollars and improve your future billing, we'll show you why and how to get started. But if it's not, we'll tell you that so you can stop spending time and attention considering something that really will not move your financial picture in a meaningful way. So look, if you want that for your utility bill audit consideration, or if you have a major energy project and you just need more of a blueprint to feel comfortable moving forward, then go to tacticalenergygroup.com and look for Energy Decision Blueprint and use the link there to raise your hand. Say, hey, I want help. Again, that's tacticalenergygroup.com. Thanks for listening to Energy Answers by Tactical Energy Group. If this helped, then send it to another operator who's dealing with the same headaches, and visit tacticalenergygroup.com to get more practical tools for your facilities.